Mr. President, you were once with the Royal Air Force serving His Majesty the King. Did you have visions of Israel even then?
Look, all my generation, I was born in Israel 72 and a half years ago, we always had visions of being independent. Statehood and the way statehood would look, I wouldn't say that at the age of 20, 21, I already saw a prime minister and an army and an air force. But from early age, we aspired for that. We were educated for it. And I can tell you that 2 years after I left India in February 46, when we started our Air Force in May 1948, I was thinking of aircraft we left behind in India. But we did have the thoughts, especially at the end of the war, when the war ended, and when we realized what happened in Europe, to our brethren in Europe, we definitely had deep thoughts about it.
So in your 20s, you were an English gentleman. And then, by the time you crossed into your 30s, you were an Israeli citizen.
No, I was never an English gentleman. I was, funnily enough, as it sounds today, I was a Palestinian.
Really?
Yes, I can show you photographs. I had Palestine on my Royal Air Force uniform here, like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And I was very proud of it. But I consider myself as a Palestinian Jew. We had a great British influence.
You mentioned your term in India. Where were you stationed? And when were you there?
I was posted first to Yelahanka in Bangalore, RAF station Yelahanka. The war was over, I was transferred to Delhi, to Wellington Airport, which is today, I understand, is Safdarjung
Airport.
Safdarjung.
What memories do you have of your stay in India?
To say pleasant memories is too simple. First of all, it was unusual during the war for an Israeli to serve out in the Far East. Most of us, all of us joined to fight Germany. And there were 30,000 Israelis who, as I said before, Palestinians from Jewish Palestinians who served in the Jewish Brigade in the Western Desert. I had a small flip in the Western Desert, but mostly served in Europe. When I put my hand up to fly this particular airplane, knowing that I'll go to the Far East, I'm not sorry, because I saw a world that was completely strange to me, completely new to me. And when I decided to take this plunge and volunteer to fly this airplane, which I say again was a great airplane, I did it because I knew that once the war was over, the chances of myself visiting India are very remote. And the chance of going to Italy or to France from here are definitely we're around the corner. And as I said before, I wanted to catch the tail end of the war. Then one bright morning, you wake up and you find out an atomic bomb was blown up and the war was blown up. I wouldn't say that we were sorry, but it took away what we were being trained for. And then I had a stretch of a few months after the war was over.
Mr. President, you were a very young man when you were in India. How did you spend your time there? Where did you go dancing?
Now you're teasing me. I had a very good time in Bangalore.
What good time did you have?
Oh, there was a big dancing hall there. I don't remember what. Big dancing hall, and I found some friends there. And I had a particular friend. She must be about 72, 73 years old now. I don't think I'll try and look her up, but I enjoyed very much the hospitality. I enjoyed the food, the special food, and of course to see the special Indian life from bed at the bottom, like people sleeping on railway stations, to exciting, intelligent, highly educated people. Like we had number 4 Indian Squadron was stationed next to us, flying Spitfire 14. And I always wondered how the Sikhs could put an oxygen mask on with a beard.
This charming girlfriend of yours, who is now 72 years of age somewhere, would she be in Bangalore?
I don't know. I do. Last time I saw her was Bangalore. I don't know.
Anyway, What was this vision of yours for Israel?
As I said before, we wanted independence. Of course, it was translated into statehood. We weren't very sure that we could, that the British could leave us alone. I'm using very mild language here. And as you know, there were some terrorist activities against the British, and eventually the British left a year after you got your great independence. And we were prepared on pre-statehood. We had a prime minister pre-statehood, Mr. Ben-Gurion. We had a minister of finance waiting to take over. We had a chief of staff waiting to take over, the man who ran the Haganah, the underground military force. So when the decision in 1947, I came back to what was Palestine in June 1947 from England. And in November 1947, when the United Nations decided on the creation of a Jewish state and an Arab state, we celebrated. Unfortunately, the Palestinians, then the Arabs, refused, and the big 48 war erupted and blew up. But we saw immediately where the prime minister, defense minister, foreign minister, and the whole structure was there underground and came out. So was the army. And the Air Force was fledgling Air Force. Of course, some of us who served in the Royal Air Force and in American Air Force were the founders of the first fighters and bombers in our Air Force. And now we look at our Air Force with great pride.
Just while we were coming into your office, I saw a framed copy of Abba Eban's letter to Albert Einstein in 1952, inviting him to become the president of Israel on behalf of the state.
Well, I think this was a mistake, because I think that Israel should have a president that is an Israeli, preferably by birth, definitely by education, and definitely by roots to this country. And with all due respect to the late Professor Einstein, who was a great man, to be Jewish is not enough to be a president of this country.
Mr. President, the peace process is at a standstill. What do you suggest? How would you nudge it along?
See, we have an agreement signed called the Oslo Agreement. We have an agreement signed called the Peace Treaty with Egypt. In the Peace Treaty with Egypt, there's a very important element that requires the solving of the Palestinian problem. The Egyptians wouldn't have concluded peace with us without that. This was in Camp David, the title of Camp David is Framework for Peace in the Middle East. A framework for peace in the Middle East, mentioning Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, and the Palestinian problem. I don't think it's stuck forever, definitely not. I am pretty sure we're now, the 17th of the month. By the time I go to India, it will move. I'm not sure it will be concluded, but it will start moving. Both sides have no alternative. The Palestinians and we must be crazy to go back to each other's throats, because they have a hell of a lot to lose, and so have we. And definitely Egypt, it's crazy to go into war again. Egypt is doing a great job in trying to improve the economy of Egypt. President Mubarak, whom I know very well, appeared on television a few days ago inaugurating a pipeline to the Sinai, where he wants to put about 1 million to 2 million Egyptians in the Sinai. That's not a leader who talks war. So despite all the ups and downs, and despite all the happy pessimists, I think that we will move.
Is the personality of the Prime Minister a problem? He's a young man for the first time in power, while those around him in the Arab world have been there for as long as the mountains around you.
But you see, there's a thing called democracy. And you can't have only the nice fruit of democracy. You have to get also what you think is negative. And 50%, more than 50% of the Israelis didn't think so when they voted him in. So old Churchill used to say that democracy is a bad system, but all other systems are worse. So we are in the system that is, and I think that we'll find a way, despite the ups and downs. It's not easy, because to find a solution for 5 million Jews, Israelis, to live west of the Jordan with about 3 million, close to 3 million Palestinians, and find a solution for how they will run their lives. And find a solution, how we'll have our own security. And how they will have their own security is a unique problem. You need a lot of wisdom, a lot of perseverance, and a lot of patience, which not always people have it, but I hope and pray that we shall have an abundance of that.
Do you think the problems of Hebron, Golan Heights, Lebanon, are these the problems, or is it largely a psychological barrier?
No. There is a psychological barrier, but what we have to do now is to decide. We have to decide what we think and what we can offer is the final status of this area, which, by the way, is Camp David. Because in Camp David it was decided that there will be free elections, and after a council, Palestinian council will be elected, there will be a redeployment of Israeli forces, a withdrawal of the governorship, and a strong police force established, which the fact is it's being done, it is in existence already, and 3 to 5 years, when all the authority is being transferred to the Palestinians, the final agreement and the final, let's say, final status will have to be decided. So we're now only in the beginning. We have 2.5 years by an agreement to come to the conclusion on the final status of the whole affair.
But for 50 years, the very leaders whom the entire nation mistrusted, did not have any faith in, who are on the other side, are suddenly overnight a whole country being asked to see them as a messiah of peace.
They're not being asked. Look, a lot depends on the leaders. I had a very interesting experience in fighting wars. And most of the wars I fought against the Egyptians, upstairs, not downstairs. And then I had the most unbelievable, surprising experience of meeting the leader of the greatest Arab country, the leading Arab country, whether people liked or not. Egypt will always lead the Middle East. There's 62 million, 90% Muslims. And I met Sadat. There's a photograph here, standing in my office. And I met an unusual character, bright, vivacious, patriot. And it clicked between us. And when he was killed, may his soul rest in peace, Egypt lost a leader. The world lost an interesting leader. I lost a personal friend. But we developed a certain friendship, which helped to find solutions to difficult problems. Not everything. Now, he did one important thing that not many leaders do. He trained and he groomed President Mubarak to be his successor. He told me that several times. And President Mubarak, who took over after 48 hours, in a great shock in Egypt and the whole world, I think is performing a marvelous duty in the last 14 or whatever years as leader of Egypt.
So you've dwelt so much on Hosni Mubarak of Egypt. What about King Hussein in Jordan and President Assad in Syria?
Well, Assad, unfortunately, I don't know, because he's not on talking terms. He sits sulking in Damascus. But look, King Hussein, he was very close to us for many years, and we had a de facto peace with him. When we signed peace with him 2 years ago, it was a de jure peace. He is a very interesting personality, with his brother, Prince Hassan. He has a difficult task to run a country with no natural resources, short of water. Egypt on one side, Iraq on the other side, Saudi on the other side, we on the west, and thank God now we're smiling at each other. But thank God we have him across the river.
What is your appraisal of President Yasser Arafat as a leader and as an individual?
Yasser Arafat is a leader who grew up in the underground, who grew up fighting not with armies. He didn't lead 1,000 tanks and opposed 1,000 tanks like we had with Egypt and with Syria, a little bit with Jordan. In the battles with Egypt, we were running tanks, sometimes more tanks entangled than in the Alamein battle. And he fought it in a clandestine way. But And he was being chased, and he went from one place to another. And I told him, last time I met him, in my house, I invited him to my private home. And I told him, look, you can be proud of one thing, that you are the first Palestinian leader in years, the only one, who achieved a great thing. You now control 2.25 million Palestinians. You don't have to deal with them. You control now an area which no Palestinian leader controlled by law, with the police, we have to ask permission to go in. Admittedly, you have to ask permission from us when you want to fly across, because it sits in Gaza within Silicon. And I recommended to him to realize that and be careful, because things gained can be things lost. I hope not. And therefore, I take my hat off to him. I didn't click with him the way it clicked with Sadat or with King Hussein. But he's a gentleman I have to deal with. And we are.
What role do you think can a country like India play in all of this?
I think India can help us in making the Palestinians understand, which is very difficult, and sometimes it's our fault, that we're not lurking behind the bush 24 hours a day. As far as we are concerned, we are now very pleased with the relationship with India. We have something like $650 million worth of business coming and going. A lot of Israelis are going there. And I can see that, especially in high tech, especially in things that you have developed fantastically, that we'll have a very common denominator to talk about. And I hope that my visit with the 20-odd industrialists with me will be a push for further developments between you and us.
This economic and business contact will be in which spheres, sir?
Well, you see, we have one thing that we're very proud of, is agriculture. But for us, agriculture now is a minute thing. Only but we've developed certain techniques that perhaps you can cooperate with us for certain areas. I don't know how much arid areas you have.
Yes.
I'm sure you have. I remember going back train through the Sindh desert. That was enough. And of course in high tech, as I've said before, we can, in aviation, in development in aeronautics, there's a crazy development in the world. Great mergers. You see, Boeing is now merged with McDonnell Douglas. This is the most fascinating news in the aviation business. And India is very much advanced in Hindustan, in Bangalore. I think there's a lot to be done together.
One suggestion to nudge the peace process along, I mean, many people are suggesting this, is a government of national unity. What are your views on that proposition? Is it feasible?
First of all, I'm not sure it's feasible. Number two, you have to know what you want. You have to know what solutions you are working for. And then find out if the other side is willing to go with you. Because there's no point just to have a few new ministers from another party. Then when it comes to deciding what is the solution of the Golan Heights, or what is the solution of Jerusalem, or what is the solution of this, that, or the other, that you'll say A and they'll say B. I'd rather have a one party or a coalition, a smaller coalition, that knows what it wants, works for it, and gets the understanding of the opposition. For example, when we came to, I was defense minister in Begin's government, and when we concluded the draft of the peace treaty with Egypt, and when it was put to voting in the Knesset, there were about, out of 120, about 85 to 90 members voted for. Because the Likud was in power and Labour was in opposition. Because it was a good solution. Even for the opposition, it was very difficult to say no. And when it came to peace with Jordan, the Likud in power and the Labour was, the Likud in opposition, about 100 members voted for it, because it was a good solution. So the thing first, the aim should be to come to a correct and good and intelligent solution. And then if people are honest and intelligent, they'll vote for it, whether they're in the opposition or not.
When you went for Nelson Mandela's inauguration in South Africa, you met the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto. What transpired between the two of you?
We had a short conversation. I was introduced to her. She didn't run away. And we had a conversation. Of course, I tried to convince her to come and visit Israel, because she said that it's too early. And that's about all, very short. But she's a very nice, very attractive lady.
Sir, most of the people of your generation were fired by a certain idealism about what Israel will be, what Israel means. There was a tremendous sense of dedication and purpose. The impression I get from the younger people in your country today is that they would like to be like a young American. Do you think idealism is going out of the picture?
No.
Do you think more and more people will want to settle there? There's a huge magnet of this very powerful...
No. The question is a known question. First of all, the world is highly influenced by American culture. American culture is more than McDonald's and Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson and McDonald's are the scouts that go in front of the camp. And obviously it has influence on some of our kids. I don't think that much. One thing that you'll find out that, we have national service. Every youngster at the age of 18, every girl has to join up. The boys are doing 3 years service. They go to an officer school, they do 4. They go to Navy Special 5. They go to Air Force School, it's 7. It's not easy. We have no shortage of volunteers. We have no shortage whatsoever in our army. This is lack of patriotism? I don't think so. We try and give our youngsters good education. Our academy is full. There's not much zip and so not much excitement like we had in our days. It's obvious, but we had our. I don't want to use foul language on television. We had our. May I?
Why not?
We had our SOBs ourselves, if you know what an SOB is, who didn't fight, who left the country. I'm very proud of the young generation. You have to cater for it, you have to look after it, but I don't think we have a deep problem.
Are you coming to India with your grandchildren?
No, they're at school, no. I have an 18 and a 15 and an 8 and a 6. No.
So which members of your family are coming with you?
My good wife.
Your wife, are you taking her to the Taj Mahal?
Oh, yes, the Taj. I thought of perhaps cutting the Taj because I'm short of time. She said, no, not on your life. I'm seeing the Taj. Now, we're going to the Taj, definitely, from Delhi. From the Taj, we're going to Bangalore. Bangalore, we stay some time there. We hop to Cochin, Bombay, from Bombay.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.